So welcome class 10 to another class where we are going to study about the topic heredity and evolution. In the previous class we studied about what is this heredity, what is the reason of heredity, and along with heredity there are variations, changes in characters. So heredity is there, passing on characters from one generation to another, but also passing of characters along with changes. So there are changes also, variations. So because of variations, we are not exactly like our mummy or our daddy, but there are some characters which are like our mummy or our daddy, which we can see and observe. Because of that particular gene was not recombined. Last class we studied recombination. The particular character from our parents that have come into us, they are into us because the gene for that character was not recombined. So it has come exactly like our parents, so we show those characters exactly same way. That is, those characters will be known as inherited characters. The characters which we inherit from our parents, we get from our parents, these are called inherited characters, or we can say inherited traits. So to study heredity, we should have an understanding of DNA and chromosomes and recombination and meiosis and other things which we studied in our previous class. But actually, to study heredity, you just need to observe the inherited traits, inherited characters. And when you observe them, you can see heredity happening. But there was a mathematician, there was a statistician who studied statistically he studied the inherited characters. Inherited characters, how they are passed on, in how many children they are passed on in the next generation, and what will happen in their children. So generation over generation, this statistician, he scientifically studied the inherited characters and how they are passed on, and he gave the first laws of heredity or inheritance. And that is why, since he began the scientific study of heredity, we call him the father of genetics. Father of genetics. Father of genetics. What is this genetics? Genetics is what we are studying, the transfer of characters from one generation to another. Not only that, even the structure of genes and how they will be expressed is all genetics. The study of genes, their structure, their function, and also their inheritance in the next generation. So our father of genetics, he did not study DNA and genes and their structure or functions, but then he studied inheritance. How are they inherited into the next generation? So we will credit him, we'll call him the father of genetics. And this man was Gregor Mendel. Very important name, keep it in mind. Gregor Mendel is known as the father of genetics. Gregor Mendel. Who was Gregor Mendel? What did he do? Gregor Mendel was a priest in one monastery in Austria. And there he studied on, he worked on, he saw characters of pea plant, garden pea plant. He worked on garden pea plant. Garden pea plant, scientific name is Pisum sativum. So Pisum sativum, or even garden pea is okay. Garden pea plant he worked on, and worked on means he grew them generations over generations, crossing them, crossing different characters, and seeing how their character will be passed on into the next generation. And by mating or crossing different characters, what offsprings, the characters in the offsprings will arise. So, and he did not just randomly cross, he scientifically crossed them, and then he did statistical work. He, out of 1,000 plants, there were this many plants like that many plants with different characters, and even their next generation also he did statistical studies, and lot of experiments he did on garden peas. He was a priest in a monastery, but he did not limit himself that I am a priest, I am in one monastery, what can I do? He found different ways, and this is something we need to learn when we are stuck up in the house, what to do, why to cry over things. You can make best use of it. Okay, anyways, that was thought of the day. Now let's go on to the experiments that he did, and out of the experiments he drew some conclusions which we today know as the laws of heredity. Very important. So first, before getting into it, let us see what is so special in pea plants. Why did Gregor Mendel do pea plants, do experiments on pea plants? The very obvious reason is that he had no other choice. In his monastery only pea plants were grown, so he grew that. But we don't have to write that. We have to write characters of pea plants. There was some benefit that in pea plants that Gregor Mendel could utilize for his experiments. So what are these speciality of garden peas? First thing, the very important reason is that it has a short lifespan. Short lifespan means it grows very quickly and completes its life cycle completely within 2 or 3 months. So that means in 1 year he could do 4 generations. He could study 4 generations because it reproduces only, it completes its life cycle only in 3 months or 2 months, at an average 3 months. So it has a short life cycle. So he could very quickly, within a year, he could have 4 generations and he could study everything. So that is why he chose pea plants. If he used any other animal, once in a year they would have reproduced. Their offsprings would be in the next year, they would show characters. So it would take a very long time. By the time Gregor Mendel would have gone old and died. But then pea plants have that benefit that they will complete their life cycle very quickly. Within a year, four generations. So he could do it very quickly. So that was one interesting thing that was of use to Gregor Mendel for the pea plant. Second thing, pea plant shows a lot of contrasting characters. Contrasting characters, or you can say contrasting traits. What are these contrasting traits? Like in pea plant, there are no intermediates. Intermediates means, for example, flower color. Pea plants show two different flower colors. Violet flower is the most dominant, most common in pea plants. Most of the pea plants show violet flowers, but there are few pea plants who will produce white flowers. Okay, and the best part is when you cross these two plants, a violet flower containing plant and a white flower containing plant, when you cross them, there is no intermediate. Violet and white, it will be less of violet, and there is no intermediates in pea plants. The plants are either violet or white, no intermediate. Okay, that is called contrasting. So there is one character, this is one character, flower color, but there are two contrasting traits. Flower color can be violet or can be white. Same way, the seed color. The garden pea is not the pea that we are eating, the green peas. It's not green peas. Green peas are mostly green in color. Garden peas are yellow in color and round. Yellow and round they are. So garden peas are round seeds they have, and their seeds are yellow in color. So most of the seeds you will find yellow, but some of them you will find green. There are no intermediates. There is either yellow seed or green seed. So again there is a contrasting character, contrasting trait. The character is only one, seed color, but two different traits. For the seed color you will have yellow seed color as well as green seed color. Same way, there are so many characters actually. Some plants are tall, some plants are short, or you call them dwarf plants. They don't grow very tall. They are dwarfs. Dwarfs don't grow. So normal plants are tall, but there are also dwarf plants. So that is, height of the plant can be either tall or they are dwarfs. There is no intermediate in the middle. Tall and dwarf, and there is no middle. Only tall ones and dwarf ones are there. Right? So pea plants show many, I told you few, there are many actually, 7 or 8 contrasting characters you will see in pea plants. So it was of use for Mendel, because Mendel could easily study that a yellow seed containing pea plant, will its children also produce yellow seeds, or is there any chance of a green seed in the pea plant? So that way he could study, he could utilize the contrasting traits. What if he crossed a violet flower plant with a white flower? Their children will be white or violet. So that way those questions were coming in Gregor Mendel's mind, and then he conducted his experiments and he saw various things that we will discuss later. And then that the pea plant can do self-pollination as well as cross-pollination. It supports self-pollination as well as cross-pollination. What is self-pollination and cross-pollination? Listen, pollination is important for a plant to reproduce. Pollination is transfer of pollen grains from the male part of a flower to a female part of the flower. So pollen grains are transferred usually by air or insects will do that. Okay. So a flower, most of the flowers are bisexual. They will have male parts also, female parts also. In every flower there are two parts, male parts also, female parts also on the same plant, same flower. We call such flowers bisexual flowers. So pollen grain from the flower goes to the female part of the same flower. That is known as self-pollination. So what will happen in this? The same characters will be transferred to the next generation. That means if a violet flower does self-pollination, their children might also, all of them will have violet flowers because there is no white involved, right? But there are some changes we'll study in their experiments. Pea plants also allows cross-pollination. Cross-pollination means the pollen grain from one male part of a flower goes to the female part of another plant, another flower. That is cross-pollination. So with the help of cross-pollination, you can cross a violet flower colored plant with a white flower colored plant. So you can have crossing of two different characters or the same characters. Not all plants show both of them. Some plants show self-pollination, some plants show cross-pollination. But pea plant shows both. So very quickly, let us see what were the experiments that he did. Not all the experiments, but some overview of that, of the initial experiments we'll do. In detail, we'll look at the experiments in my next class. So let's take a simple thing that what he did. He took tall plants. Okay, he took tall plants, generation over generation tall plants, and then he took dwarf plants and he crossed them. He crossed tall with dwarfs. He crossed tall with dwarfs. So what are these tall and dwarf? This is the character of the pea plant. In scientific terms, in genetics, we call them the phenotypes. The phenotypes is tall and dwarf. So this will be referred as phenotype. The characters that we are studying over generations is known as the phenotype. Now he guessed. Now when he crossed tall plants with dwarf plants, he could get two different results. In some plants, when he crossed a tall with dwarf, he saw that all the plants were, all the next generation, all the offsprings were tall. One observation of his was this: sometimes when he crossed a tall with dwarf, he would see about 50% were tall while 50% were dwarfs. So he immediately understood there has to be a reason for these two results. Okay, so when he crossed a tall plant, tall phenotype plant with a dwarf phenotype plant, he could get two options. Every time he used to get two different results. Sometimes he used to get all tall plants, no dwarf plant. Where is the dwarf one? He would not know. And sometimes he used to get half of the population, half of the offsprings tall while half dwarfs. So what was the reason he wanted to find out, and he came out with many explanations which I will teach you in the next class. So wait for the next class. You will get the idea why you get two different results when you cross the same phenotype plants. Okay, so till then, study well, work hard, have a nice day, bye.